Ken, what we're looking at here is it's a 1911 Harley V-twin, which in 1911 in the manual was called a double. And Harley's bread and butter from when they first doing retail, 1905, was a single, and they sold the big single 400 plus cc bikes. They came out with a V-twin, a double, in 1909 with atmospheric heads, which they had on all their models, belt drive atmospheric heads. It was a dog. Didn't get past their testing department. They destroyed those that they built. They didn't build that many. There is one in the museum. There's, we think it's one of the originals for sure, engine-wise anyway. And then they went back to research and development for 2 years. Indian had been making a twin since 1907. Almost a 1,000 cc twin. In 1909, they come out with a Model A, B, C, all singles, magneto battery models, and then they come out with a 7D model, the V-twin, about 800 cc twin with a Bosch magneto, open mag. It's a dead giveaway for 11 and earlier when a Bosch mag's open and not closed. They farmed out their tires to the tire companies, G&L in Indianapolis. You could get those, or Goodyear, or Goodrich, or G&L. These are G&Ls. Thank God some of the reproduction companies have made the perfect copies. Schebler made their carburetors, Bosch made their magnetos, Troxel and companies like that made their seats, and then Harley-Davidson made the rest of their stuff. Corbin and some of those things made other parts for axles. Thor made the rear hub. It wasn't uncommon for motorcycle companies in those days to buy bits and pieces from different manufacturers. So to say Harley would make everything for a bike, that is not true, nor did Indian make everything for their bike. This bike is one of 8 that remain. According to Herbert Wagner, the noted Harley-Davidson author and TV guy, I've talked to him extensively. They think there was somewhere around 700 doubles made. The Harley records are very difficult to research in the early years because they're not around. He was able to get in during the AMF period when he started writing, and he's written a lot of books. He's got a really good book up to 1909 called At the Creation. That got me stimulated. He was one of the people that identified this bike with Lonnie Jr., the guy that started the Cannonball. I thought I was buying a 1913 engine. It was up on the wall. It had a sprocket on it. It had push rods. It wasn't atmospheric head. I thought I was buying a 13. I tried to buy it off the guy for 10 years. Finally, he came in from Ontario, bought a new Harley, and said, "Still want that, all that Harley stuff?" And I went, "Yeah." So we drove to Ontario right away that night with my son. We're there for breakfast, bought it, and then threw it on the internet. And guys like Herbert Wagner and Lonnie Jr. said, "No, Ross. The sprocket's wrong. You should have a pulley on it." And that's a first year. With the serial number 304A, that is not the 7,600 to 10,000 where the singles were. There might have been doubles in there, but we don't know for sure. But all the 8 doubles known to exist all have a serial number, low triple numbers up to the 2900s, all with the suffix A. And there's a bunch of singles. I've seen 7A, I've seen 46A, I've seen 1900, 2000. I've seen probably 10 singles that all have an A. But this is 304A. My good friend Joe Gardella in Michigan, he gets our feeling to have the oldest Harley double V-twin in the world. He's got 284A, and then there's 6 more. 5 of those are in the United States, and one of them recently went over to Germany. That was bought out of an auction in Vegas. So the Germans have the oldest V-twin. The Canadians have the oldest V-twin, and certainly Joe Gardella has got the oldest one of his 5. If there's more out there, we don't know where they are. But I've personally met every single person that owns those 8, and a couple summers we've driven around on the bike and actually gone to see and take pictures. I would be remiss if I didn't thank guys like Nick Muth, who provided measurements, and Danny McGill, who helped me fabricate and get the toolbox, and Joe Gardella for spending a couple days at his place measuring his stuff, and Bruce Linsday for his expertise, and people like that they've resurrected a lot of old motorcycles. It's belt drive. I mean, it's an 11 belt drive with push rods. And you think, it's primitive. 4 years later, you got a 3-speed transmission with a shifter. It's basically a modern day bike. So it goes from like ultra primitive in 1911. By 1915, you got a 3-speed transmission, spark advanced gas, and you know, no different really than bikes right into the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so what a person does on a bike like this is you loosen off the belt, you open up the exhaust valve, you turn some gas, you pedal the bike, you drop the exhaust valve, it fires up, you loosen the quadrant off, you take it off the kickstand while it's idling away because it's not driving the bike, and as you would pull back on the quadrant, you advance the spark, you advance the gas, and you drive away. Ted Hector had this thing going down the road. He probably was into the high 40s pushing. This thing would do over 50 miles an hour. Ted built a lot of the engine. Gary McDonald was I mean, I'd spent 10 years from 2008 to 2018 collecting everything for this bike, but it was Gary that was the impetus for me. Came over, let's get going, so we ripped the engine apart, and Gary brought his welder over, and next thing you know, we had the thing half fabricated in the basement, or not fabricated, half mocked up, and then we both looked at each other and said, you know who's got to build this motor and fabricate the last little bits and pieces to make all the nuts and bolts fit. So out we go to Ted Hector, and people that know Ted and Gary will know that between the two of them, they got like 9 Bonneville speed records on 3 different 38 Indian, 48 Harley, and a 40 UL Flathead, and they're going back again this year. So Ted masterminded, fixed a couple broken fins. Gary really did one of the really tougher pieces of the engine, like on the exhaust port, it was broken off on a 45, and he got a piece of threaded steel that was exactly the same, cut it, fitted, tigged it, ground it, you know, and now it's nickel plated. You'll never see where any. The engine was in excellent shape. When you crack this open, the belly numbers are 304A. The top of the engine case is right here. They're 304A. The cylinders are 304A. Your mag cover is 304A, and your cylinder, your flywheels, they're not 304A. They're 304. For whatever reason, they didn't stamp those with an A. But the flywheel and the engine wasn't even worn. The way we thought of it is this is a belt drive in 11. Open magneto, full of dirt. By 13, 14, the Indians making V-twins. You got 3-speed transmissions coming out by 13. Harley's got 3-speed transmissions by 15. We just don't think some of these early belt drives got the heavy miles that, you know, modern day guys go out and pound a couple 100,000. We think this bike might have been retired early. When the engine was pulled out, it had copper breathers soldered onto the Schebler carb. The right Schebler manifold. The engine was 100%, except for the pulley, was the sprocket. But what I call these depression survivors, like we think that the motor probably got yanked out, and it probably ran a water pump or a little chainsaw. That's why the pulley came off, and a sprocket went on to probably run a chain to run a water pump. So we desoldered all the breather, and the carb, you know, carb cleaned up with a kit, and you know, Ted rebuilt the carb. Ran it down the road. We've got a nice video that we made it look like a silent film. Hey, Mabel, gone to town. Don't wait up. There's Ted going down the road on this bike, honking along in its primer. Now, the gas tank was leaking. This wasn't right. That wasn't right. Fixed all those things. Well, it's still, just the wheels were restored to get it up. They ran it so it was run in, ran like a watch, ran beautifully. Then tore it all down again, right in the garage right here. Stripped it right down. Bagged and tagged it. You know, bright nickel, dull nickel, da-da-da paint. And then off to the plater, who took a long time to plate it. And then we took it out to our painter and his son, Pete Craker and his son. Pete's a master hot rod painter. I mean, he goes to California and helps out with the high-end cars. He's not a motorcycle painter, but when he knew what this was, you know, the oldest Harley second oldest Harley in the world, we took the inside of Danny McGill's toolbox from a period, put it on a spectroscope, matched the paint to the new water-based paint. And I went, water-based? I don't want to go through a car wash and I don't know anything about painting. It turns out this is like tougher than acrylic enamel. New Mercedes-Benzes are painted with it. Incredible paint, matched to a T. I didn't like that I'd seen some of these restorations where the gray looked blue. The gray got matched perfectly, and this bike is completely hand pinstripe. This kid is so good at pinstriping, I don't think Harley had that good a pinstriper in its day. He matched it. The paint schemes could have been this blue with the gold and the red, or it could have been like an interior gray. There was two colors for 11. There's not a lot of the blue ones around, and I just like that one best, so I went with the blue. Of course, we wrestled over the decals, so we went with the decaling as it shows in the original manual from 1911. This is a nice $35 copy. I'm told the original one would cost me about $1,500 US if I could find one, but this was a godsend because the decals were clearly in the book. So I've seen 2 or 3 11s, or I mean I've seen a dozen 11 singles, and the decaling's all different. So I went with what was in here. Talked to Bruce Linsday, went with what he went with. So we've got the what they call the oak leaf with the red, and then that's the correct decaling on there. The bar and shield, by the way, is not on the toolbox on the other side. It is the oak leaf. Bar and shield did come out in 1910. It does show up in some bikes that have been restored, but we think we got it right. So there's a lever on the side that lifts up and opens the flap on the back of the muffler so that it opens up wide. When you're going down the road, you pull the lever up, and then you've got, you don't have that pressure. You don't have, and you get more power, but it's noisy. So when you come into town, this is 1911. Vehicles are brand new. They've only been on the road for 2 or 3 years. There's ordnance. Can't scare the cows. Can't scare a horse in a buggy. You'll get a ticket. So when you can't buy a horse or you put it into the village, you push the lever down, it closed the flap on the exhaust, and it became silent. Hence the name Silent Gray Fellow, because all the Harleys from 15 and earlier are gray. So the name Silent Gray Fellow comes from pushing the cutout down on the muffler at the back to you increase the horsepower when you want to open it up, but you can shut her down when you put. And of course with a belt, you lag the belt, and as long as it's, it's leather on leather, and you put dressing on it, and it bites on it. Just old harness dressing is all they used in those days, and the belts are a single loop. Where do you get a belt made? Where do you get a belt made in 2017 when you're restoring a bike? Well, Page Belt Company. They've been in business since 1860. I phoned them up. Give us the dimensions. We'll make you a belt. Well, why are you still making belts? Mr. Metcalf, do you know how many machines in America still run with leather belts? We've made belts for these old Harleys and early bikes before. I ordered a belt from Vermont or Connecticut or wherever it was in the U.S., Page Belting Company, and I think I sent them $375 US happily, and it came back in 10 days delivered to my door in Canada. So that's where you get belts. You can still get leather belts made by a company that, who knows, might have built them for people's great-grandfathers on these bikes. Tires were Coker tire. They reproduced the tread, perfect copy. And then I got parts here from lists from probably 20 to 30 different people in the world over a 10-year period of making trades, and like the axle, front axle came from Sweden. The Thor hub and the belt sheath pulley came from Michigan, and some of the stuff from South Dakota, some from Ohio. Swap meets at Davenport. I bought an original seat. That's a reproduction seat, Truxel seat. I have almost a perfect original one. I wrestle whether I should put that on. I might just do it. I'll show it to you folks later. But the Fox made the grips because these are a special grip that it's what they call it, a Coke bottle style. It's open at the back. It's that early period, so you can adjust with a big nut on the end. Like Tom Faber made the bars, a perfect copy of 11 bars for me. The list goes on and on and on. These went 50 miles an hour, no problem during their day, but a chain-driven Indian or a flying Merkel or a Cyclone, they would have been faster. So Harley, like any other company of the day, would have gone to R&D, and by 15, They've gotten rid of that. 14 is the last year you could still order a belt. By 15, they move into chain-driven, 3-speed tranny, and the rest is history, as they say for Harley. So, 304A, 1911, double. We like to call it a V-twin, of course. And as Ted said, maybe even the 4 original Harley and the Davidsons touched this bike. Who knows? They would have been around then. The company would only have been building bikes for, think about it. I mean, they started a company in 03. They make some prototype to race in 04. But according to a few noted historians, they don't really sell bikes, maybe about 7 in 05. Which, think about it, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, you're looking at 7. Why is this model called a 7D? Why isn't it 6? Or why isn't it 10? Well, because it's the 7th year they're selling Harley Davidsons. They're really selling them in 05. And maybe that's why Bruce Linsday and Joe didn't get the respect they should have got when they went to the 100th anniversary in 03, because they were riding an 05 single, which many believe that is the first one. And then Joe on his 11 twin, they were riding the first single and the first twin, so it was quite a feat. Some antique guys covered it, but I don't think you'll ever find a 1903 Harley, and somewhere out there's an 04 prototype. Nobody's ever seen it, but there is a couple of these 5s kicking around. Anyway, that's the history of Harley, and right now I don't know whether we want to fire it up again or not. It runs like a watch. I got a nice video, but it looks pretty darn good here right in the living room. Because what happens is usually when I restore something, I ride the hell out of it in the air and it doesn't look good anymore. So right now, it's, as my wife says, it's like a piece of art. It needs to be in the house. So here it is for now anyway. That's it.